I am Erika Galentin with the Northwest School of Aromatic Medicine, and today we are going to go on a deep dive into an aromatic medicine that has been used for thousands and thousands of years. This is myrrh, Commiphora myrrh, or in some cases Commiphora mulmul, but myrrh. And this is it here. And so when we're looking at, the overall archetype of myrrh, when I close my eyes and I think about this idea of purification and cleansing. There's a purification and a purging of, in the Christian tradition, which I'll talk about in a second, it's really about cleansing out the evil of things and purging sin, right? And protecting what is holy. Looking at the Judeo-Christian tradition, if I can say that right. And so we're looking at the Bible here, and we've got the Old Testament where myrrh shows up quite a lot, and specifically in the Song of Solomon many times over. And including in the parts of that where there's this description of the perfect aromatic medicine garden. And so it's present in the Old Testament. And then, of course, it's also present in the New Testament as one of the three gifts that were brought to Christ on Christ's birth from the mages, right, from the three kings. There's a few other traditions that I've read about, especially coming out of Egypt. Using, myrrh to scent the linen that they would wrap and mummify with. Apparently there's association there with the festival of Osiris, and as well as believed, and this is interesting, as an incense, because of course we're going to talk about burning myrrh as an incense, was apparently thought to help kind of be a conduit for the dead between Duat, or the other world, and this world. Traditional use of this plant as a physical aromatic medicine, right? Of myrrh as a physical aromatic medicine. One of the things that traditional Chinese medicine says about myrrh, as a physical medicine, is that it's thought to have a very stimulating effect on blood circulation. Because of this, we have the ability to help stuckness, right? Things that are stuck, pain, swelling, inflammation. And then, of course, there's also this idea of motivating the blood to areas of the body where healing needs to happen, and where healing is a bit stuck. So, so there's a lot of talk about, especially the topical use in traditional Chinese medicine, being kind of structured around some of this kind of more purulent, stuck, sort of pussy manifestations, right? Like sores and carbuncles and boils and things like that. Also for, stagnant areas of blood where we have bruising, right? We think of a bruise as basically blood under the surface of the skin, right? We can see it. There's been a burst blood vessel. And the blood coagulates and kind of, for a lack of a better way of putting it, it becomes stagnant as it's being reabsorbed and broken down by the body. And so this idea of applying myrrh topically to help break up some of that stagnation, again, that's that stimulating action. It was also used traditionally in the treatment of traumatic injuries where there were issues with impending infection. It's also topically for bone and tendon and ligament pain. There's a tradition of use in traditional Chinese medicine for helping stimulate the menstrual cycle in individuals who aren't bleeding regularly. Other topical applications, things like hemorrhoids, which is thought to be a stagnation also, and other painful swellings topically. And so what's interesting is that, we see a lot of similar uses in Ayurveda. So moving over to the medicine of India. And, Ayurvedic and Arabic medicine, there's this really, this honoring myrrh as a very revitalizing or tonic sort of physical medicine. in Ayurveda, we really start to see a very very long tradition of use for the topical, to helping support oral health. You'll see traditions of use as far as, things like, gingivitis, where we've got swelling and maybe even some infection in the gums and soreness in the gums, to helping support the healing of mouth ulcers, also pharyngitis, laryngitis, any sort of inflammation in the sort of upper tubes here in the neck. A lot of people refer to myrrh as being antiseptic, antimicrobial, fungicidal, anti all of the bugs and weird things that make us sick and cause infection, right? Anti this, anti that, anti this. And, and to Myrrh's credit, right? To Myrrh's credit, there is definitely, when it comes to topical use, right? So actually putting myrrh on the skin or putting myrrh extract of some capacity in actual situ with an infection. It does have anti-infective properties, and that's been demonstrated over thousands of years worth of use. And also, even some modern scientific studies have really validated this use, right? But when we talk about something like myrrh being antiseptic, right, or antibacterial or antifungal, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be that, inside us too. And the reason why I'm saying that is that for myrrh to do its magic, it needs to be in contact with that it is trying to fight off. In addition to it being antibacterial, antiviral, fungicidal, right? Another one of myrrh's properties is that it is very, very drying, like dry. This dryness, right, it's an astringency, right? There's a toning and drying and astringency sort of action to it. And so when we're thinking about using myrrh, we're looking at, the kind of wounds that are wet and weepy and pussy, and whatnot. And this is definitely, sort of a first aid discussion, right? And I just want everyone to be mindful of the fact that this isn't going to necessarily, if you have an infection on your skin and it's not, the body's not resolving it on its own, you need to go see a doctor, because we can get, especially bacterial infections in the skin can go bad, and we can go to sepsis and all kinds of other, you don't want to mess around. You might want to just go take the antibiotics, all of the safety caveats. Let's be smart here, folks. One of the things that's been found out about myrrh in studying it over the years from the Western scientific tradition is they have discovered that one of the things that myrrh does is it helps to catalyze tissue regeneration, and it has also been shown to increase white blood cell count in the wound area. One of the things I think is fascinating is that the European Medicines Agency, right, which is very similar to the United States Pharmacopoeia, actually lists myrrh as an official medicine. And what they have decided that when you're labeling myrrh, the final labeling standards of the monograph for this particular plant, and specifically the tincture or the alcoholic extract, there's two things you can say about it, according to the Europeans. And this is all because it's backed by science, right? And a little bit of tradition. So the first thing that you can say is for the treatment of minor ulcers and inflammation in the mouth. And the second thing that you can say about it, if you're marketing this product in Europe, is for the treatment of minor wounds and small boils. Not large boils, but small boils. In the tradition of aromatic medicine and herbalism that I was trained in, myrrh is considered what we call a mucosal stimulant, right? A mucosal stimulant, meaning that it is stimulating to the physiology and healthy processes of the mucous membranes that line the body, right? And all of our tubes, right? any tube that goes from the outside world to the inside world is covered in a mucous membrane. And so there are a few body systems that myrrh has an affinity for in this action of being a mucosal stimulant, right? And one of those is the digestive tract. So we'll talk about that. We also have the respiratory tract, right? So we have the breathing apparatus and even the upper respiratory tract. And then we have also the urinary system and the reproductive tract. For now, we can focus on the respiratory tract, right? This idea of a mucosal stimulant. We have the stimulating action. It also, the eclectics brought in their understanding from traditional Chinese medicine as well, is that it moves the blood, right? Stimulates mucus, the mucous membranes, and has this drying effect, right? And so with that, this idea of enfeebled, waterlogged, mucus-logged, bogged down lungs that are just full of catarrh, are full of phlegm, are fatigued, and don't have the robustness or the tone, right? The tone to expectorate out the gunk. There's also a tradition of use in supporting the digestion, right, in the digestive tract. When we're looking at the stomach itself, right, this is where myrrh is thought to kind of have a lot of its prowess in the digestive system, is in the stomach itself, where there's, kind of chronic inflammation, stomach ulcers, and, difficulty digesting. Large doses of myrrh, right, are problematic, because instead of helping with the inflammation and the gastritis and some of that excess heat and inflammation and infection, large doses are actually can cause people who have a sensitive stomach, but in larger doses can also create an enormous amount of gastric heat, burning. I've got great sweating, marked prostration, and occasionally nausea, vomiting, and purgation. So like really quite can be purgative. The other thing I'm going to say about both the internal and external use of myrrh as well, is that it has been for a very long time used potentially to help stimulate the menstrual cycle in the absence of a menstrual cycle. And so it has been given the title of a menagogue, right? And a menagogue is a substance that promotes menstrual flow. So being that it does have that sort of affiliation, there is a caution for people who are pregnant. And so if you are pregnant, you should only be using myrrh internally or externally under the supervision of a qualified practitioner. One of the main preparations of using myrrh is in the form of an incense. And especially for these kind of sacred, religious, or ceremonial rites, where we're fumigating and we're purifying space. As far as preparations go, there's also the steamed distilled essential oil. It is often used in aromatherapy for supporting expectoration and breathing. It has also a role to play in skincare, so wound healing salves and things like that. But there's also a tradition of use for using myrrh externally just to help support the complexion in general. And so, you can use a little bit of the essential oil, in a carrier oil as a base for a facial moisturizer and things like that. Okay, so the tincture. So the tincture is an alcoholic extract. One of the things that we need to know about resins in particular is that they don't dissolve down with lower percentages of alcohol. You actually need a really high percentage of alcohol. And generally speaking, the standard percentage for myrrh is 90% alcohol. This is 180 proof. What you're going to do is about is a kind of a math ratio, and this is important because myrrh can be really strong, and you want to and it's also very sacred. So you want to make sure when you're making it. You're making a tincture from it that you're doing so with that in mind, right? You want to do it right. So 1 part myrrh right, by weight, to 5 parts alcohol by volume. And so what is a small dose? What is a large dose? Of course, this is all very dependent on the size of the person, their general health and well-being, their robustness and their constitution. But generally speaking, we're looking at anywhere between 5 and 15 drops at a time. I hope that you all have enjoyed our chat today, and I very much look forward to seeing you again here very soon.